Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 7th day of November in the year of our Lord 2025. Next Monday, the 10th of November, is the 250th anniversary of the birth of the United States Marine Corps, an organization that I served in and with for 4 years, more than 50 years ago. The title comes from a belief drummed into our heads as young Marines back then, and that is Marines live and Marines die, but the Marine Corps lives forever. I'm not going to spend this entire report taking you down memory lane because there are just too many bad things to talk about. This report that I do each week is, in a way, a journey through the sewers of the world. People often ask me, why don't you ever talk about any good news? My answer is because I don't see any. Often, good news is in the eye of the beholder, and it depends, to quote an old saying, on whose ox is being gored. The point is, though, that someone's ox is always being gored. Politics seems to be the art of making it the other guy's ox instead of your own. I wonder if other people with military experience remember it the same way I do. I remember mostly the pleasant times of friendship with my buddies, sitting in bars with them all over the world. When I served in the Marine Corps, the number of lieutenants was very small, so you could walk into a military bar anywhere in the world. Odds are you would see someone you knew. We all had the same thing in common. That gave us purpose. It gave us camaraderie. That's what I remember most of the time. I forget the moments of sheer terror and moments of extreme boredom that went along with it. I take great pride in my Marine Corps service and in its 250-year existence. I guess it's one of those things like you had to be there, folks. But this 250th anniversary reminds us that next 4th of July will be the 250th anniversary of the United States. That's right. That's right. The Marine Corps existed before the country. A fact that was pounded into us by our leaders in the early days. Those are some of the things I remember as I look back at over more than 50 years. But now it's time to move back into the real world of today. Sometimes even the real world doesn't seem real, or we might say that can't be real. And with AI, you just never know for sure. We try one fantasy, and when that fails, we try another fantasy. We use one imaginary problem to escape from a different problem that perhaps was not a fantasy but was caused by reliance on a fantasy. For example, last Tuesday, New Yorkers tried to escape from one of those fantasies by embracing an even more toxic fantasy. Time will show the results, but if history is any indicator, the results will be horrendous. This is the result history has given each and every time populations have tried to indulge in the New York fantasy. Yes, the people of New York elected a self-described socialist as their mayor. The race was not even close, and Republican Curtis Sliwa did not get enough votes to deny the second-place candidate the race. He did that on his own, but Andrew Cuomo lost despite spending more than $65 million. He did not have the message. And New Yorkers are apparently tired of the same old corrupt politicians, so they voted for a new George Soros-funded candidate. Yes, folks, it seems George owns a lot of American politicians. I obviously don't know the mind of each individual New York voter, but apparently Mamdani found his appeal among the young, and that generation, the one coming up behind my daughter, voted him into office. That generation knows they are struggling. They know that what they were promised turned out to be a fantasy that could not deliver anything but promises. Go to college, it said. Go to college, use debt to obtain a meaningless 4-year degree, have a pretty good middle-class job which doesn't provide nearly enough money to live in this new credit-based economy, especially in an expensive Democrat city like New York. These young people know that the average age of first-time home buyers is now 38 years old. That is the generation ahead of them, not their generation. So they are struggling. And the promises they have relied on, the promises that gave their parents a good life, are just not there for them, no matter what happens with interest rates. Despite the efforts of the federal government to stimulate the economy with more debt, it just gets worse because debt is the economy, and debt is toxic. They turn to a man who is basically foreign to all those promises because he comes from a different place. He's backed and funded from different sources that in my carefully researched opinion, are intentionally destructive of our way of life. He has a different answer for them. His solution is very simple. Why has no one thought of it before? These problems could be alleviated by just making things free. City-run grocery stores should solve the high cost of food, right? What about the cost of running perhaps the world's biggest public transportation system? The cost to them of using public transportation is a pretty simple solution. Just make it free. Along with free child care, we can reduce rent with a rent stabilization freeze. Now we know from experience that real property will not be maintained in New York or upgraded because landlords can't raise rent to cover it. But oh, so well. How do we pay for it all? Well, that's simple. We just take the money from the rich and give it to the poor. So that means this new mayor is a kind of modern-day Robin Hood. There are problems out there in this economy that will be solved one way or another. If they are not solved through some type of action, they will solve themselves in some version of collapse. The fantasy of everything free will not solve the problems I'm talking about because this economy is based on credit and debt, and that is getting out of hand. Everything free is the opposite of the correct solution, which is to pay down debt or at least do something to stop or slow its increase. I don't see any evidence of that solution being tried. In fact, it just gets worse and worse. Delinquencies and debt are rising rapidly. Auto, credit card, student loan debt. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, delinquencies hit a record $18.4 trillion in the second quarter of 2025. The national debt hit $38 trillion, which causes strain across the economy as service on all that debt plus downward pressure on our standard of living. So those are a few of the problems that confront the general government, and now they confront the people of New York City. The new mayor makes it very clear he wants to be a national figure by declaring war on Donald Trump. By making his successful campaign about Trump, he seems to have convinced his supporters that there is a vast pool of money. They're not getting their share of it. That's because of greed, of course. If the people who control the vast pool of money were not so greedy and selfish, they would release the money so New York voters could have their financial problems solved by getting things they used to pay for free. All this greed seems to make the new mayor very angry. He finally revealed that anger in his victory speech. He seems to be an egalitarian as well, this mayor, because he intends to cancel New York school programs for gifted students. So the gifted students will join all the others at the bottom. So we can't have meritocracy anymore, whereby a young person is able to achieve all that a free society allows. Instead, your gifted child will be confined with all the non-gifted children, hopefully in the middle, but more likely at the bottom. Is that your message, Mr. or Miss Politician? Apparently those at the bottom and in the middle will support you in large numbers if that is your message. There is a possibility that this socialist victory in New York City will turn out to be a positive thing for Republicans nationwide. The new mayor sees himself as a national figure, as I said, and that might not be such a bad thing. The Democrat victories, which seem so significant, are concentrated along the coast and the large Democrat cities. In other words, this self-described socialist mayor obviously made significant inroads with his audience, and his message resonated with them. But on the other hand, it's the same audience and doesn't indicate any new trend. The new mayor then is the new face of the Democrat Party, and we will see how that plays outside the coastal Democrat strongholds. The elite of the current Democrat Party don't want this socialist as their new face, but he claims it anyway. So they spend time distancing themselves from him after he won. The Republicans should learn from this because the message is that people are concerned about bread and butter issues, literally. Sometimes the elite in Washington seem unable to relate to ordinary people who care more about the cost of ground beef than what new missile the Chinese are testing. The government shutdown is what is interfering with food stamps. That's a good example. People are dependent on food stamps, can't seem to live without them, since most of their lives have been spent eating food courtesy of other people. I'm just saying that the current officers of our government in Washington have not taken advantage of what the Democrats have done with this shutdown. My message might be they admit they have forced the government shutdown to obtain political leverage. So they get their political leverage, but you don't get your food. The people on the excuse me, folks, the people on the other side of the politics of the new mayor understand there are legitimate reasons why people voted for him. Those reasons should be addressed. It's not much different from when Trump was elected. Instead of asking why was he elected, and what are the voters concerned about, Democrats developed one message and one message only. Trump is bad. He's a racist. He's a fascist. Other than that, we have nothing to say. So the millions who voted for him have no concern worthy of being addressed, just like our new mayor. If Republicans want to succeed, perhaps they should find someone capable of addressing and refuting this new mayor's policies. Finally, folks, are the voters who elected Donald Trump irredeemable fascists whose views are not worthy of consideration? Are the voters who elected Mamdani crazy neo-Marxists who represent a coming insane generation and are therefore too crazy to hold serious opinions? No, is the answer to each question, but I do predict the election of this new mayor will end in socialist disaster for New York. The slide into the abyss of our once greatest city will accelerate. However, the future looks bright for real estate agents in Florida. That's the way I see it, folks. Until next time, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.